Whole stack of information and we'll really boil it down for you. Today we're digging into something pretty specific, Cistus canadensis. You might know it as rock rose. And our source material for this one is William Boericke's Homeopathic Materia Medica. We're looking at excerpts from that. Now, if you're not familiar, these Materia Medica, they're essentially these super detailed profiles of substances used in homeopathy. Think of them like, I guess, extensive symptom catalogs, right, based on observation. Our mission today, just to be clear, isn't about endorsing anything. It's really about understanding the level of detail in these historical texts. We want to explore the, frankly, surprisingly specific notes on Cistus canadensis, especially how it was thought to affect the body, and this really unique connection to feeling cold. So as we go through this, maybe keep this question in mind. What can these sometimes seemingly unconnected symptoms, all tied by this thread of coldness, tell us about how people understood illness back then?
That's a great way to frame it, because these texts really do reflect a unique way of observing the body. They often zeroed in on symptoms that might seem, well, almost odd or very specific to us now. We'll be looking for those patterns. What makes Cistus stand out in the system, and how they build these complex symptom pictures from really detailed patient notes.
Okay, so with that context set, let's get into Cistus canadensis, according to Boericke. It's described first off as a deep-acting antisoric remedy. Now, antisoric, just quickly, in homeopathy refers to remedies thought to tackle some kind of underlying chronic condition, often linked to skin issues. Beyond that big label, Cistus is noted for having marked action in glandular affections, herpetic eruptions, and chronic swelling, so glands, skin, swelling.
But the thing that really jumps out, and it's incredibly consistent, is this core characteristic. The patient is described as extremely sensitive to cold. And they experience this pervasive sensation of coldness in various parts. This isn't just a footnote, it's like the central theme. You'll see it pop up everywhere as we go through this.
It's quite something, isn't it? That one sensation could be so dominant. Makes you wonder about other remedies, too. So let's unpack where this cold feeling and other unique symptoms actually appear. Starting, maybe, with the mouth. Boericke notes the mouth feels cold. Simple as that. But also things like putrid, impure breath, pyorrhea, which is gum disease, and even that, it hurts to protrude the tongue.
Yeah, and if you connect that right to the throat, the cold game continues. The throat can feel spongy and very dry. And crucially, it says cold air passing over parts causes pain. There's even this really specific observation: breath, tongue, and throat feel cold. There's also this mention of a small dry spot in the throat, making the person need to, sip water frequently just for that little spot.
And linked to that area, you also see swelling and separation of glands. So glands swelling up, maybe with pus and hawking of mucus. It even describes how bad neck swelling could get, sometimes causing the head drawn to one side. Again, that specific point, sore throat from inhaling the least cold air, it just keeps coming back to cold air sensitivity.
Exactly. That link between cold sensitivity and these other physical symptoms is really what defines Cistus here. Now, moving on to those glandular issues more broadly, Cistus is linked with some serious sounding things like malignant disease of the glands of the neck. And again, swelling and separation of glands of throat, plus induration of mammae, which means a hardening in the breast tissue. The text paints a vivid picture sometimes, like describing the neck studded with tumors.
Wow. The Materia Medica also points out its affinity for the nasopharynx. That's the bit behind your nose, above the soft palate. And apparently it could abort colds that center in posterior nose, the kind that comes with lots of sniffling. Okay, then let's shift to the skin. The list here is pretty long, too. There's itching all over, small painful pimples, lupus, and glands inflamed and indurated, hardened, inflamed glands. It even mentions mercuriosyphilitic ulcers.
Which were, historical terms for sores they thought were connected to mercury treatments for syphilis. So quite specific historical context there.
Yeah, definitely. And the description of the hands is striking. Skin of hands, hard, thick, dry, fissured, deep cracks. Also, itching of swollen hands and arms.
And predictably, perhaps, that cold theme. It keeps showing up internally, too. Boericke describes a cool feeling in stomach before and after eating, and even a cool feeling in whole abdomen. And then there's this little oddity tucked in, an unusual desire for cheese.
A desire for cheese? That's really specific. Do they ever explain why, or is it just one of those quirks they observed and meticulously noted down?
Usually the latter. It's part of the highly specific symptom picture they were building. Just another data point, really.
Okay. And this coldness isn't just in the torso, right? It extends out.
Absolutely, to the extremities.
Yeah.
The text mentions tips of fingers sensitive to cold, and maybe less surprisingly, cold feet. Other issues in the limbs include a sprain pain in wrist and tetter on hands. That's an old word for skin eruptions like scaly patches or blisters.
And more seriously, syphilitic ulcers on lower limbs with hard swelling around them, and something called white swelling, which probably refers to a kind of joint inflammation like tuberculous arthritis.
Right. Before we wrap up the symptoms, there are a couple more worth mentioning, like diarrhea from coffee and fruit, described as thin, yellow, urgent, and typically worse in morning.
And respiratory wise,
It notes a person might get asthmatic after lying down, feeling like the trachea feels narrow. Sometimes this is preceded by formication, that creepy, crawly ants on the skin feeling.
and that profound coldness, it seems it could even mess with sleep.
Yes, the text is explicit. Cannot sleep from coldness in throat, which is quite a specific reason for insomnia.
So bringing it all together, Boericke summarizes the modalities. These are the things that make symptoms better or worse.
And no surprise here, symptoms are worse. Slightest exposure to cold air, also worse from mental exertion. They are noted as being better after eating. But that sensitivity to cold air is paramount. It really underpins almost everything.
Okay, so when you lay it all out like that, the sheer consistency of cold is just remarkable. Mouth, throat, stomach, chest, fingers, feet, and how it affects symptoms, even sleep. Boericke also lists its relationship to other remedies. Antidotes are listed as rus incipia, and he suggests comparing it to colonium carbocalcarea, argentum nitricum. For dosage, it mentions 1st to 30th attenuation, so very dilute homeopathic preparations, and also using it locally as a wash to arrest fetid discharges.
So, yeah, to sum up that distinct picture of a Cistus canadensis from this source, it's overwhelmingly about this deep, pervasive sensitivity to cold, feeling cold internally and reacting badly to external cold. Combine that with a strong tendency towards glandular problems, swelling, hardening, separation, and specific skin issues, particularly dry, cracked, itchy conditions or certain types of ulcers. That's the essence of the Cistus picture in Boericke.
So what does all this mean for you listening to this? Well, digging into an entry like Cistus canadensis really highlights the incredible, almost microscopic detail that went into observing and recording symptoms in this historical system. What's really striking isn't just the level of detail, but how these very specific, sometimes unusual symptoms, like, a cold stomach before eating or can't sleep because my throat feels cold, actually became the defining markers for a remedy. It makes you think, doesn't it? How much of how we understand health today, even with all our technology, still relies on observing these small, sometimes idiosyncratic details, even if we interpret them completely differently now?
And that really leads to a bigger question, I think. When you encounter these incredibly detailed symptom lists from the past, focusing on such specific sensations, what does it make you consider? Think about the intricate ways our bodies react to things, internal and external stimuli, and even more importantly, how those reactions have been viewed, interpreted, and categorized across different times and different medical traditions.
That's a really interesting thought to leave with. A lot to mull over about how we perceive and categorize the human experience of feeling unwell. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Cistus canadensis through the lens of Boericke's Materia Medica. We hope it gave you some food for thought on different ways of knowing and understanding the body,